All right, we'll make sure. Okay, it's recording. Hello, creatives. It's Moni, your host for the MilSpouse Creative. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. And this morning we have Joanna from Joe My Gosh. Most of you know her from the Military Spouse blog. And she's given me the honor of sitting down and chatting with her today and getting to know a little bit about her, her journey, and what she does. So let's get started. Good morning, Joanna.
Hey, Moni, how are you doing?
I'm good. So tell me a little bit about, first of all, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're a super busy military spouse on the move and all of that. So I just want to say thank you for joining us this morning and sharing a little bit of your life with us. Tell me a little bit about where you're from, who you are, and tell me a little bit about how you got into the military life.
Sure. So that's a loaded question.
Okay, let's start with this. I'm sorry. I'm like, I do all that. I'm sorry. So
no worries.
Tell me about where you're from, like
sure.
where you're from and all of that. Let's start there.
Sure. So I'm Pennsylvanian and born and raised in a tiny, tiny little rural community. I actually grew up part of my life on a farm. So then after college, I lived in Baltimore for 5 years. During that 5 years, I reconnected with a friend from college who I met through marching band. And we weren't really good friends in college, but we talked or whatever. We'd gone on one bad date. And then, we stopped talking for a long time. And then he joined the Navy when we were 24. And so I wrote him a letter because I had been a Teach for America teacher. And we have this boot camp thing in Teach for America. And nobody ever sent me any mail during that boot camp time, which is definitely not military strenuous, anything like that. But, it was kind of lonely. Yeah. And so when I found out that he was going into boot camp, I wrote him a letter. And I'm not joking. When I sent the letter, I had this weird feeling like my life was going to change.
Really?
And about 3 weeks later, I got a letter back from him. And we just kept exchanging letters when he got out of boot camp and out of A school. When he could call and stuff, we started talking for hours on the phone, 5, 6, 7 hours after work.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And it was almost a year until we actually got to go on our second first date, which was kind of funny. And it's always funny to see what people say about that. So then we dated for a year. I found out he was going to Afghanistan. And I had known him since I was 18. So at that point, we got engaged. Then we spent a year engagement apart. During that year, I started writing Joe My Gosh, not for any particular entrepreneurial anything, but because I was making care packages because I'm neurotic and very type A. And I was like, I can't take care of him except by sending John ridiculously ornate care packages.
Right.
I sent him one a week and was super insane. It was bad. It was really bad. Anyway, so I started taking pictures of them just to share with friends and stuff. At that same time, that's when Pinterest started exploding. And so I went from seeing 5 people visit my website a day to literally thousands of people. And then I was like, maybe there's something in this. Not entrepreneurship again, but just a way to reach more people and to talk to people who are just as lonely as I was. Because I knew nothing about military life. I was not from a military family. I had never dated anybody else from the military. I was living in Baltimore, which, isn't close to a base. I had no lifeline.
Right. So let me ask you this. So you met him right as he was going to boot camp. So you had no idea what military life was like.
Oh, no, not at all.
Your family's military.
Yep.
Oh gosh. Okay. So tell me in that journey, like so far, you're making care packages. When was it where you felt like, oh, this is what it means to be a spouse? Like when was it in that time or was it like later on where you were like, being a military spouse is this for me? Like this is really what it's all about.
Um, yeah, I think I was really young and dumb. When I look back now, like I felt so blindsided, and I taught at a school which I loved and I love my students, but everything was very high maintenance all the time. So between John being away in Afghanistan and me like breaking up fights, but also teaching AP English and everything, I didn't really have time for a lot of self-discovery. I was just like, head down, keep working, do this thing. I think what really hit me was when John came home, it actually coincided with the end of the school year. So he came home in like June, and I resigned from my teaching position, which I had been at for 5 years, all at the same school with people I loved, with students I loved. We got married a month after he came home. So like, we're riding this high of like homecoming and finally being together, because other than R&R and college, I'd never spent more than a weekend with him. We had never spent long periods of time together.
Right. Wow.
So now we were together, like the honeymoon was awesome because we kept looking at each other. We're like, neither one of us is going away, like we're together for real now. And then we got back to Virginia Beach where he was stationed. All my stuff was in boxes because we were moving in 4 months, so we didn't unpack anything. And I was fine during the summer. And then when school started up, and all of my friends who, I went to high school with or I graduated with, they're starting on their 6th or 7th year of being employed in business, or they're getting awards or all of these other things. And all of a sudden I felt like a huge failure. Like I went to a good university. I was in the honors program there. I had invested so much of myself into what I do,
Right.
that felt so, and I didn't realize how much a paycheck really mattered to me. Until I didn't get that paycheck anymore. And
Right.
then I kind of had a weird crisis where I was like, but what am I worth if I'm earning $0?
Right. Wow. So you were like, is this what it is? Is this, like.
Right. Like, so now, and we had some weird stuff. So both of our cars died within a week of each other.
Oh my
like
God.
Right after we got married. So my car, the electrical system completely blew out, like totaled.
Mm-hmm.
John's car, the brake system went out, totaled.
Oh
So, we were like super poor and super unprepared. Like we thought our cars were going to last obviously longer than that. John needed a car. So all of a sudden we were a 1-car family where I didn't get to use the car very much. So I was also kind of stuck. And Virginia Beach is very difficult to walk anywhere because
it's very busy.
20-lane highways,
No.
It's a game of Frogger if you want to walk anywhere. So, right. So I all of a sudden I also kind of felt like I was like homebound, and we were kind of between duty stations, and so there wasn't the opportunity to work. So I literally did everything I possibly could online. Like I answered those dumb surveys for points to, I started freelancing during this time, and that's when I really started thinking about making Joe My Gosh more of a business and less of a,
that was also your like aha. That was also like your aha moment. I may not be able to go anywhere and I want to make money, but I can do this from
Absolutely.
The situation that I'm in. So you took it, instead of like really staying stuck, you kind of made something out of it. So I love that.
I wish it was that easy. You make it sound like, oh, and then you did this. I spent a lot of time crying.
Well, no, I'm sure. Oh, trust me, I know. You probably, let's think about that. You went from having a place to go, having callings, having all of these schedules and, people to, you're at school and getting a paycheck, and now you're just at home and there's nobody there. Do you guys have kids?
Nope, we don't have kids. We don't have a dog or a cat. We don't even have plants. So it was just like
Just
me
you.
and SVU, you know?
But what I like is that you saw an opportunity and you're in that. I mean, that's a lot of time too to be like get resentful, to feel insecure, you know, to go through all of those emotions. But I think it's very like it's applauding that you were like, hey, wait a minute, there's something here. And then you moved on it. You didn't just let it pass you by and kind of just stay where you were. You know what I mean? I know that it probably took a lot of time. It took some self-growth. So how long have you had your blog?
I will be coming up on 5 years this August, but truly,
Wow.
I only monetized for the past 3. Real, like seriously, you know, doing monetization for the past 3.
So, I mean, okay, let me just ask you this. I mean, when he's in school and doing all these things, were there times where you felt resentful or, you know, just going back to, you know, all of a sudden you don't have anything. You don't feel like you have worth. What is your role now? I mean, were there times in that or did that come later on in more moving and things like that?
All of the above. I I emote a lot. Like I'm usually pretty even keeled and chill. But I have like once my fuse is like gone, it's gone.
Right.
And I definitely like, and I wrote about it on my blog, but like there was a moment where, you know, I said to John, I was like, I left everything in my life for you and I
Right.
have nothing now. And God bless him, he is the best person in the whole world. Like it has never been a wedge between us. It's always been like you know, so how can we make this better?
Right.
And we're just like Joanna, I know right now, like you're feeling all the feels. So here's some Firehouse Subs and let's watch a movie and I'll give you a hug. You know, sometimes it's not that he's fixing problems for me, but he's willing to listen and understand that
And
like,
kind of let you sulk. Like
yeah, a little bit.
Sometimes you just want to cry and you want to say all this stuff and you don't want them to like fix it. Just listen,
Right.
just say, yeah, you're right.
Validate
Just say
me.
you're
Like,
right.
yeah.
That's
And
it.
so exactly. And John has done that every time. Like he is a champ among champs. I can't even, I mean, from the beginning of our marriage, he was always like, you know, this is your time to do what you want, to build what you want. And, you know, I'm working on a novel right now, and that's because he pushed me, like almost to
Right.
the point of me being like, dude, lay off a little bit. Where he's like, did you write anything today? I want to read what you wrote. Like, you know, all these
Right.
things which are just so lovely. And I can't imagine going through it with anybody else but him.
Right. That's amazing. That is really sweet.
Yeah.
So being stuck in the home and not having the car is what drove you to start Joe My Gosh. And of course you saw the peak, the interest that other spouses had as Pinterest was around. So how did you make that a business? How did you say, okay, so for the first 2 years you were just kind of sharing your life and kind of seeing where it was going, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you start monetizing? Like what is something that you were like, hey, I can start really making some money off of this?
Sure. I totally fell into it because I'm not a business person. I'm like the worst business person. So what happened was, I think it was just a function of being part of a community, and a function of being a voice in that community. So like the Mill Blogging Buddies group, I started.
Love that group.
Yes. I mean, that really was the beginning for me to say like, oh, there's other people out there who are doing this. And then, you know, people sharing opportunities or whatever. I did a lot of freelancing, at first for free because just to get my name out, you know.
Right.
And then, you know, I fell into freelancing opportunities. USMC Life gave me an opportunity to write for money. Next Gen gave me an opportunity to write for money. You know, Military Spouse Magazine, Military One Click. I'm trying to think if there were more. but through that, I really learned the ropes of what writing for the community looks like, and
Right.
what makes good content that people actually want to read. Because it's not good enough just to like throw some stuff up. If
Right.
people aren't reading it, then it doesn't really matter.
Right.
If you want to monetize, if you're just doing like a Dear Diary kind of thing, that's awesome. And, and then that's for you. But if you want other people to read, then you kind of have to look and see what they want. You have to know the best practices of headlines and graphics and all that stuff too.
And it's also like, I think it's a learning process, because when I first started my blog, I had like a handful of readers. And then when I started getting like really like in the beginning, because my blog, I've only had it since like 2014. And when I started getting more personal, like really sharing like my life, like like how I get through, I feel like that's where people were paying so much more attention. And they were like, oh, I love your blog, or asking me questions. They would inbox me and ask me, hey, so you blogged about, I don't know, I just recently did one like in the life of a milspouse entrepreneur. And it was literally like just what I do every day, like for 24 hours. And that one had the most shares and the most questions. People really want to know, like, they want to see how you make it work. And it's not all easy, but I feel like people, when they can relate to your brand, they will support you more. So I think that's awesome. And when I started monetizing on my blog too, I started freelancing for free. So that's what I was doing at first. And then I was able to use some of that to say, hey, I've written this, and here's the publication, and here's a publication. And then now I can start charging. So Absolutely. It's not always about the money in the beginning. It's about the credibility.
Right. And it's about the quality too, I think.
Yeah.
And can you deliver something on time? Can you follow directions? Because a lot of the people that I worked with or worked for, later they became references for me. They became trusted friends that I still talk to, I still look up to, and who give me honest feedback on things,
Right.
and say like, hey, I saw this is great, or what are you thinking? Like,
yeah, right? Like you're trying.
What is going on?
So tell me what it's like in like an everyday for you. Like, what is your transition like now that you have this full-time blog and you're evolving into other projects? Like, what is your schedule like? I know you don't have any kids, but there's still like, there has to be some change. What do your changes in your house look like?
Sure. So we had a lot of changes. John actually left the military. He separated in November on my birthday, weirdly enough. So that was an awesome birthday present. But so we're both kind of in transition right now. And my schedule looks pretty similar every single day. And I would really say, if you want to work from home, then try to be as structured as you can. Like some days you can't do that because of XYZ, but try at least to wake up at the same time every day. Try to put on real clothing.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yes.
Real big one.
Yes. It gets so depressing so fast.
It's lonely. It is so lonely, right? So lonely.
Yes. Like I would say, honestly, put jeans on.
Make you sit up and like
wear yoga pants. Sometimes yoga pants are awesome, but make yourself wear like real people clothing for a little bit, because otherwise I think it's really easy to start feeling very depressed.
Yeah. And then, so like, I know some people work in block scheduling.
Mommy, the mating Mama Gumbo.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's real life.
Dad, you need to go talk to your dad. You need to go talk to your dad, please.
I need to talk to the mating Mama
Oh my
Gumbo.
gosh. I'm so sorry.
No worries. That's what real life is.
So yeah, working from home, and the kids don't have school today, which I didn't know until like very last minute that they had a half a day yesterday and no school today, which is, I don't know why they have so many days off from school. But yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day and they said they do block scheduling, which I don't do that because I'm like, my son is gone for 3 hours during the day. So I work 3 hours and then I take a break and then I work again, or it just depends on my schedule. But, you know, waking up, like you said, and like just really putting your clothes on and showing up for yourself. I think that's what I would call it. Right.
Like eat breakfast, try to at the same time. Something I'm really working on hard this year is to go to the gym, if not every day, every other day, to make sure that I am taking care of all of me and not just parts of me. It's just really good to get away, especially if you spend all day in front of the computer. I don't do any kind of block scheduling or anything, again, because I'm probably insane. And what I like to do is I like to work on a project from start to finish or get as far as I can. So I don't really take breaks until that project is done, which is probably really bad.
I was just going to say that's a lot.
Yeah, I like I said, I think I'm probably crazy, but for me, there's something that's really gratifying about being able to and it's probably from teaching, you know, like when you're a teacher, you have a stack of papers and you grade them down and then you can see that they're down, you know, that they're done.
Yeah.
That was something that was really hard for me as a freelancer and then as a, you know, as an entrepreneur, was that I felt like my work was never ever done, ever. Like I could work all day and it just felt like I moved some pixels around the screen, but there wasn't anything physical done. So what I started doing was keeping like to-do lists so that I could cross them off, even the dumbest, smallest things like emailed so-and-so, whatever.
Yeah.
Then that way I felt accomplished at the end of the day. That was really good for my mental.
Well, because you don't have anybody sending you an email or saying, hey, you need to follow up with this person on this project. Please send out this, meet with so-and-so, schedule this. Like you don't have anybody telling you that. You have to really be a self-motivator and your own advocate to like really, you know, say, like you said, like crossing off the email. Like I have a to-do calendar by She Plans and I love it because I'm a to-do person. Like I can, if I see it crossed off, I feel accomplished. But like I feel like you said, it's never ending. You feel like your job is never done because there's an end result. And then when you get to that result, you're like, okay, this is next. Like, how am I going to build on that? So I feel like you're right. There's never an end. And also you're building yourself. You're not building somebody else's company. So now when you're done doing that, they're done. Now they can move on to the next project and assign it to that person that needs to do the next step. So, I mean, yeah, there is a lot to be said, I think, about entrepreneurs who, you know, figure out what works good for them. So like, and it's lonely. It is super lonely. So yeah, going to the gym is a big part of my life too, because you can also socialize. It gives you a place to socialize and get out like all that stress if you have any.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me a little bit about what are some of the hardest transitions? I know that your business is a virtual business, so which is what a lot of the creatives in this community do. They have virtual businesses, and it moves with them. So tell me a little bit about what you do to make your move easier, and if it's been hard transitioning from place to place.
Sure. So when we PCS, and John and I really only PCS one time together, but when we did, my website really wasn't anything huge, so that was very, very easy. I think what's been the hardest thing has been, while he was in the service, transitioning between all of the things that he had to do. So, you know, he stood watch it was supposed to be half a year. It ended up being 2 years. So his schedule was literally changed every week. Our weekends were always like crazy. And I mean, I give people who do that and have children all the props in the world, because sometimes it was hard to keep just myself and us together with, you know, life. So I kind of, in that time, I tried to work when he was working, and that was kind of hard to do because or when he was sleeping. So if he was sleeping during the day, I was working. But I tried very hard to be present when he was home because he just wasn't home during regular times very much.
Right. So you kind of adjusted your schedule around his so that you guys could have quality time.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's one of those things that kind of was a luxury for me because we didn't have pets or kids or anything. So I could just, you know, change. And that was really nice. When he left the service, it wasn't really difficult. The hardest thing was probably the week and a half. We did a Diddy move because we were insane. But we were only moving 2 hours away. So
right.
we went from Virginia to Pennsylvania, and we were just like, it makes more sense just to do this ourselves.
Right.
So, you know, that was kind of hard, just trying to, because at that point I do work full-time for Military One-Click now. So I was working full-time for them. I was keeping my site up on the side, and then I was wrapping all of his bar glasses. Like, you know, wrapping all of our stuff because he was still going to work.
Right.
And so, you know, going to work, and like I wasn't going to work.
But because it's like when they're out processing, they like do nothing.
Right, but you still had to show up. So it's like, well, I'm gonna sit here on the kitchen floor. You know, I had like Degrassi on Netflix because I'm a nerd. I had that on. You know, I had my computer up to see what was coming in, and then I was wrapping glasses, or like, you know, I'd have to stop the moving stuff and work as frantically as I possibly could. And then
right, so that's hard. That's a lot.
It was pretty miserable, but I'm glad we did it. You know, I'm glad that it happened, and all the balls stayed up in the air. I was just a pretty awful human being for a couple of days.
You're just juggling them, and you're like, you have no idea. I don't know what you did at work today. Just probably nothing, because when they're out processing, it's like, who's going to give you an assignment to do something? Because you're not going to be here next week or like a month from now to like finish it. So you're just like sitting at a desk or whatever you're doing. You're just like taking up space, and you have to report to work because you're getting paid for it.
Yep.
So wow. So that's a hard transition, even without kids. I feel like that's a lot, like trying to get everybody ready to move, you and your spouse, and working on your blog and Military One-Click. Like that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot.
It was fun.
But you got it done, and now you're back in a groove, you're back in a swing of things. So tell me there's a lot of spouses that want to have a blog or do have a blog. What are your top 3 tips to a spouse who wants to start a blog?
Ooh, top 3. Okay. In no particular order, I would say be authentic.
Yes.
It is really easy. And especially if you want to make it a long-term career, if you want to blog and to freelance and to have relationships with people in your niche, like whether it's military or parenting or, you know, fashion or whatever it is, be authentic, because people who aren't, are frustrating to work with. And I think that you do a disservice to the people that are your audience and that you write for. Let me see. I think the next one would be to know what your strengths are. So for me, I was an English major. Writing is my strength.
Right.
But for a lot of people, even people who want to blog, some people say like, oh, you know, I'm not good at grammar, or I'm not good at X, Y, Z. For me, I'm not good at photography, and I don't even have an interest in it, which is kind of like one of those things that you need to have when you're a blogger. Right,
because you have to capture, you know, everybody. If you want somebody to read something, you have to capture their attention with the photo.
So like for me, my workaround was I use stock photos a lot of the time. And I did learn some like basic photography tips, but I didn't invest in a big like camera. I use my cell phone to take pictures.
Yeah.
You know, for other people that might look like buying Grammarly so that you clean up your writing, or having somebody to read your stuff ahead of time. Or, you know, having a friend who's really good at all the blogging, like technical stuff so that you don't have to worry about that. Because you can't do it. Well, I shouldn't say can't. Very few people can do it all and can do it all well. And if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to follow through.
Yeah.
And then the last one, I think that it's really important to remember who you write for.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Go ahead.
So like for me, I feel like my audience, while broadly they are military spouses and significant others, and most of them, you know, vast majority of them are female. I feel like usually when I'm writing, it's writing for the people who are like me, who felt lonely or don't know what's going on with military life, or just kind of need like a friendly voice, somebody that's going to say like, yo, it sucks right now, but it's going to be okay. Like, I promise you, they're going to get off watch. Life isn't going to be terrible forever, you know, or this deployment will end. And I know it doesn't feel like that now, but there's light on the other side. Hang on, you'll be okay. You know, and I think often, especially as a young blogger, you really have a tendency to want to write for whatever gets you numbers. And what I've learned is really good writing, being really authentic, and being really honest. That's what gets you big numbers.
Like I was telling you about the one like every day. Like I was like, my kids wake up at 5:30. They wake me up. My son is in the bed. I'm exhausted. Like just. That's my life, and I just make it work, you know?
Life isn't Pinterest. It really isn't.
Oh, no. And that's the reason, like, I really wanted to do these kind of MilSpouse influencer interviews, because I'd like people to see, like, everybody sees your blog, it's successful, but they don't really know the story, right? So they see you and they think everything is, like, perfect. You know what I'm saying? Because they didn't see you before, like they don't see the backstory. They don't see the
Dude, I'm not even perfect now. I'm a running train wreck all the time. Like you don't even understand.
Well, I tell you what, it looks great online. And that's what I'm saying. Everything online looks a certain way, or you have a perception of the way a person is or how they are successful. And like being able to, for other spouses to sit here and relate, oh, I can relate to her. I'm in that transition and it's okay to feel like this and all of that. You were talking about earlier about writing for like all these different magazines and websites. How did you find leads for those? Like, I know a lot of bloggers are curious. Like, did you just look up who the editor was and send them a post?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I looked for, and this is probably part of like my, like being an English major. I also had an emphasis in creative writing. So I've done a lot of like short story submissions and stuff. So it was kind of second nature to me to be like, okay, you know, who can I get something to? And what is my worth, or what's my point of submitting something to this magazine or to this website? Which I think, you know, had I not been an English major, I probably wouldn't have had that thought originally. Again, kind of like playing to your strengths. Like other people have had brilliant ideas about how to monetize or how to get the word out there with like videos and all this stuff, which isn't second nature to me. But yeah, so, and I think that too, like almost every person that I submitted to, I have a personal relationship with now, like 3 years after the fact.
Right.
I think is another thing, like when you're a young, I don't want to say young, but like when you're first starting out, I think it's easy to feel like you're very insulated. And then you forget that everything is online and everybody can see everything. So if you go and you trash, for example, Military One Click, right? And you trash us on social media. And then the next week, you know, regardless of whether or not I agree with what you're saying.
Like your personal view is your personal view.
Right. But if you like tweet something after like, you're garbage, I hate you. And then you come back the week later and you're like, hey, I really want to work with you, pay me money. That's a really difficult thing for the person who's sitting there going like, you know, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't work with people who are critical of Military One Click. That's not the point. The point is just think about the way that you're portraying yourself.
Yeah, I feel like that is very important. And I know that, you know, it's like, keep it real, keep it 100%. And I'm telling you how I feel. But, you know, there's a tactful way to be
Absolutely.
like, and I think that some things are better left unsaid, or sometimes you can just say it to your spouse. You know what I mean? You don't have to put it all online to just show you're 100%, you're like real and genuine. Being real and genuine to me doesn't mean being out there and putting negative things into the universe and giving your opinion about every single little thing. You know what I mean?
It's an opportunity too. If you have, and I think this is where if you're just starting out, you kind of forget this. But you know, when JD, Lauren, and we wrote a book together, and when we put that book out for the first time,
I have it. Is it the what is it called? The
Modern Military Spouse.
I have it right here.
But
no lie, I read it.
There it is. Yeah. So when we put that book out for the first time, I got some very, very angry, upset messages from male military spouses. And
really?
So, yeah, and I totally get it. Like, I think that there are very few criticisms that don't originally come from like a good or a hurt place. And so, like, most people aren't just being mean to be mean. They just get upset because it like hurt them or whatever.
Right.
And so I had a couple male spouses who were very, very upset on social media. And then one guy reached out to me privately and said, you know, I can't believe you guys would publish this book without having any male stories in it.
Oh, no time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, and which I totally get. And it was something that JD and Lauren and I had talked about, you know, like, how do we face that? Because we're all women. So we decided we're going to write from our experience because we can't authentically talk about somebody else's.
Somebody else's, yeah.
But what I said to that male spouse was like, hey, Joe My Gosh is an open book. If you want to write something, I'd be happy to publish it. You know, tell me what it's like to be a male military spouse, because I have no idea and I'll never know. Yeah. So I think a lot of times, like, look at if someone ticks you off, look at or upsets you, look at it as an opportunity to calmly go to them and say, like, hey, Military One Click, I was really kind of frustrated that you wrote XYZ. From my experience, that's not how it is. Right. Can I tell my story? And as the editor, I'm going to look at that and say, like, yeah, let's talk about this side, because you're part of the military community too, rather than just spouting off and putting it out there. Like,
right, because you never know. It's a small world. The military spouse community is a small world. I mean, there's what, 1.2, a little bit over 1.2 million. Is it million of us? I wrote it down somewhere.
Yeah, it's something like that.
There's like 1.2 million of us, but it's a small world. You know, you really have to do your due diligence, to do research, make sure who you're talking to. And also the same thing is, if you have a following, I think it's so important to share the right inspirational information, or even just good information, because people are watching you. So you have young spouses who are like, as soon as they join the military, they're finding every single military spouse blogger. They're lost, they're resentful, they're alone, they don't know. And they're like following you. And here you go saying all these negative things. You know, there's enough of that in the world. So I think it is like bloggers that have a following. I think it is a responsibility to put out things that are going to inspire and motivate them and give them good information and educate them, right?
Yeah, and I think too, to remember that life is not always happy-go-lucky, right? Especially the military world. It's not. And so even I noticed that the best writers among our groups often talk about the hard stuff, but they do it in a way that's not self-defeating.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. I love that. You're absolutely right.
And I think too, kind of to go back to like, it's a small world. You know, I was hired at Military One Click because of the freelancing work that I was doing with them. And I found Military One Click through a mutual friend. And so if you're looking at making life, like making your career long-term, especially in the military community or really in any niche, being cognizant of the levers that are there and being cognizant of the people who know things or the people who are willing to help, and not burning bridges is really important, because some people like to take some gasoline and just light stuff up. And that's totally if that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. But it's very difficult in a small community like that then to be able to work within it, especially if you've lit a whole bunch of those bridges on fire.
Right. So tell me a little bit about what you have going on in the next, let's say, 3 years. So what's going to happen with Joe My Gosh? Don't you have is it the Blogger Brigade?
That's Military One Click. Yeah.
Okay. So what's going on with that? Like where's all that going and what can we expect?
So everything is rocking right now. It's really exciting. So if you go on Military One Click, we just did a big site redesign. So it's really exciting. We've been publishing way more content. We're talking about all different kinds of experiences. We've got a whole bunch of different people from different walks of life writing. And for me, that's really super empowering. I love seeing people who are so diverse being able to say well, this is my story or this is my view or whatever.
Right,
I think it makes us stronger. And I think it challenges some of those stereotypes that people have, especially about military spouses.
Yeah, which there's a lot.
Yeah, there are so many. And it's so exciting to be able to reach out and say hey, does anybody know a spouse who has done this? Or does anybody know a military family who's done that? Or hey, can you write about all the breweries you visited when you were at Oconus in Europe?
Oh my gosh.
I love that kind of stuff. I'm such a nerd. So that's really exciting.
I am too. And I think the older I get, I'm let's talk about the coffee shops.
Right? Yeah. And it's just those little pieces of not everything has to explode in the military community. Right. You know what I mean? There's so many other facets. And when you look at the people who've come before us, I'm sorry, I'm nerding. I'm totally nerding now. But when you look at different communities who have the Japanese American community, for instance, I'm working on a piece about their contributions to World War II. All these cool stories that make up who we are now is just thrilling. And I'm really looking forward to telling those in the next 3 years. That's
awesome.
What's
your book about? Can we just get what is it? Is it a fiction, what is it?
Sure. Yeah. So I am really bad about working on my novel. So I went 6 months without working on it. It's fiction, and I'm working on one that's just regular fiction. The other one is YA. So, but because I'm super superstitious about it, now I feel I have to go back some wood.
Well, now you have to commit to writing it because you've put it into the universe.
Right. So people are nobody hold it against me, if it never comes to fruition.
It will, because you already put it out there. It will. It'll happen. And so what's going on with Joe My Gosh?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So to be really 100% honest, Joe My Gosh is hanging out there. But with the site redesign for Military One Click and everything, I haven't had a chance to really give it some oomph. So
right.
It's hanging 10. It's what up world, but it's not really I haven't worked on anything.
Well, you're wearing a lot of different hats, and I think I was talking to another military spouse entrepreneur, and she was you need to have just 3 big pots, and that's it. And I'm in a transition too, and I'm I have 5 big pots.
Yeah, you're 3. Don't you mean 15?
I'm I have to admit, I have to get rid of 2, and it's so hard to balance everything. And then when you're responsible for more people or more things, it is hard. But I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited that you just took the time to chat with us and let us know a little bit about your journey, about being a military spouse in the beginning and how you started your blog. And I think it's so important to share the journey you've been through, because there's so many spouses that want to be bloggers or who want to start a blog or who have a blog, to get some of these little tips that you gave us today. And I'm definitely going to be putting all your resources, if you want to get a hold of Jo, Joanna, all of her stuff is going to be linked on here so you can connect with her. And when this publishes, feel free to ask questions and send her questions or encourage her in her journey, and she will definitely respond back. And do you have any last words for our community?
Yeah, pull the trigger. Like, if you are thinking about doing it and like you just keep thinking about it, it'll never get done. So, you know, even if it's, I mean, I'm not saying like go just, you know, buy $1 million property just because you're like, let's do it. But, you know, if you're thinking about starting a blog, take steps to make it a reality instead of just continuing to go through it in your head.
I think that's
you can do it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moni.
No problem. So happy you're here. So creatives, thank you so much for watching this, and we look forward to any kind of questions or information and tips you want to share alongside of Joanna. And we wish you tons of luck at Military One Click and writing your 2 books. And thank you so much for being part of the MilSpouse Creative community. And let us know if you have any questions. And we're signing off.
Thank you.